Well, this all started with one ball joint on the left side having a little bit of play in it. So what I ended up doing was putting 2 ball joints in. I cut the dust seal on one, so I ended up putting 3 ball joints in. And then my CV axle here has got a dust shield on it right here. And all the parts stores in Lamar's had no idea what I was talking about, and they tried to give me the oil seals for the axle, which is way back up in there. And I told them outboard, it's on the wheel side, it's after all the CV dust boots. It's not a CV dust boot, it's past the CV joints, and it's right after the spline. Going in, you have a nut, your hub, the splines are in the hub, and then there's that dust shield. Well, none of them knew what the hell I was talking about. I ended up going with my VIN and some numbers off the axle to Ford and getting a dust shield. That's what it looks like. Ford part number right there. All you Lamar's parts people, that's what I was looking for. Anyway, after having this laid up for 2 days because I couldn't find the right dust shields in Lamar's, I finally have them from Ford. But I also decided to rotate my tires while I was at it, since I had everything ripped apart. Well, I got the back tires off, let's just pull the drums. Well, I pulled the drums and found I needed brake pads, or shoes, brake shoes. Shoes in the back, pads in the front. Pads in the front are okay, but I needed to replace these. I also noticed that the brakes were kind of pulsing, kind of shaking the truck as I stopped, so I got the front rotors machined. Problems don't stop there, because the ball joint in the front left was worn out. This tire is kind of chopped. If you can see that, maybe not. It's bad. So I just about had to get a set of tires, but because all I did was ride my motorcycle all summer long and completely neglect the truck, it all bit me in the ass, and it's late fall and it's getting cold and I need to fix this now. So I'm going to start throwing parts back together. Oh, this is the dust shield, how I found it on both sides, so that was doing a lot of good too for my $200 a side bearings for the front. Okay, we got the grease zerd in. I might have to change the angle of that as I get more parts on. I don't remember where the clearances are. And I've got the dust seal for the back of the bearing for the front wheel on. Next is the putting the rest of this in between the 2 control arms. Okay, I've got the pinch bolt for the top ball joint in, and this does go into a groove into this. I got the tie rod in, and I've got a cotter pin in it. I've got the bottom ball joint in, and I've got a cotter pin in that. Next is going to be the ABS sensor. So I have 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. It just goes right into there. And then I'm going to take a T-handle Allen wrench. And put this bolt in. Then I've got this little bolt here to attach this bracket to the back here, and I don't have enough hands or a cameraman, so you'll just have to wait till the next segment. The next step is to put this nut on the end of the CV axle, and then after that I can put the brakes on. Alright, I've got the brake shield on this side, and now I can put the rotor on. And there's the rotor. It's newly machined. The thing with brakes is you gotta clean them off once you put them on. Otherwise all these fingerprints and stuff and the dirt will mess up your brakes. A couple quick tips on disassembly. I didn't remember to make a video when I was taking this apart, but you can see I've impacted this where the tie rod goes in here. I hit this a couple of times with a hammer when I had all the nuts and bolts loose, and it'll pop that tie rod right out. Same thing with the lower ball joint. I don't remember which side I hit it on. If you just hit it right here in this meaty part with the rounded end of a heavy ball peen hammer, it should pop that lower ball joint loose. And the top, it just slips in here, but if you just gently tap, you might have to go a little bit more and gentle, but don't really beat on it. Just tap it here with a hammer and that top one should come out. ABS sensor, good luck. I have a hex head bolt back here because I actually broke that bolt off getting the bracket off, but that's tricky. Be very gentle with the sensor is all I can tell you there. Now that I've got the caliper bracket on with these two 15mm head bolts, I'm going to spray down the rotor here so there's no dirt on it. Next step will be very carefully to put the pads into these clips, and I say carefully because they're very sharp and you'll cut yourself to pieces if you slip onto them. The next thing you have to do, I'm using a wide jaw vice grip here, is get the piston back into the caliper, and this is just several steps of clamping it down, tightening up the bottom and clamping it down again to get the pistons both back in so that you can slide them over these brake pads, which by the way they just slide right in there. Now that I've got both of those pistons back in the caliper, I'm going to take a second to tell you it's very, 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 very important that when you start your vehicle for the first time, pump the brakes until they become stiff. Otherwise, you're going to put it in reverse, back up into your driveway, hit the brakes, nothing will happen, and you'll go right into the garage across the street, or in my case, a ditch and a milk barn. Now, since I have the pistons retracted in the caliper, you notice that I have free movement side to side, and that's good. If you don't, you need to take these pins out and put a special grease on them so they move freely. But that's a good thing right now. That's also why you need to pump your brakes once you're done working on this stuff, so your brakes actually work. You won't get an accurate torque spec if you do the lug nuts while it's in the air. So once I have all four corners of the truck done, I will put it down on the ground and tighten up the lug nuts to their proper torque spec. And when you apply torque, you do it in an even, steady pull, not jerking it like that. So like this. Then I go around and make sure all the lug nuts are at their torque spec. So the last thing you want going down the road is one of them falling off. What you need to do once the truck's put together and on the ground is torque that nut to 162 foot-pounds. The reason to do it on the ground is it's just easier. The truck's weight's holding it down. You don't have to hold the tire in the air from spinning as you tighten that nut. To further reinforce my point about the brakes, that went right to the floor. And so did that. And that one went to the floor. And that one went to the floor. There we go. We finally got it to stiffen up. So if I wouldn't have done that and I would have put it in reverse, I'd be in that barn. Okay, one last thing about working on your front brakes. If you have your rotors turned, your pads are not going to match up. I'll go full on brakes here. Now, I usually stop twice that fast, but the reason for me not stopping is the pads and the brake rotor are not matching up right. all the little asperities, I'd have to draw a picture, but all the little asperities in the brake pad do not match the asperities in the rotor. So what happens is you hit the brakes, the contact surface isn't as big, and you don't stop. So you might want to go around the block a few times very carefully, using your brakes to get those to match up a little better. And as you drive it, you'll notice the brakes grabbing better and better every time you use them.